الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a Thursday where the weather's starting to feel a little bit less cold, but you never know these days. Things just come up and down and temperature goes up and down. Let's start off with some community news. Leqaa Kordia is a sister in the community from New Jersey, from Patterson. That's not really significant. That's a detail. And really was not heavily involved in anything except for what everyone else is, which is caring about Philistine and attending talks, attending gatherings, wearing a scarf, hatta, or kafiya, some people call it. And that was it, pretty much. And she ends up getting arrested. And she's in a prison with essentially who knows what the charges are. Elifun, could you kindly pull up her Instagram page or the free Leqaa Kordia Instagram page? It's unfortunate that all we could do is pretty much give attention to the subjects. Because just think about it. Imagine if your wife or daughter was like this. Now, she got put in jail. She got bussed around with a bunch of strange men. They bust them around to different jails all the time. They try to make them completely miserable. It's one of the part of psychological warfare that they do. She's in these contained spaces with a bunch of strange men. She's oftentimes, at some point, they search them. In many cases, they come in on her in the jail when she's not dressed. She's extremely sick all the time because of the food situation, because it's cold, because of the misery. Okay, I'd cut there, and you could start scrolling through the pictures here. And recently, she was so malnourished that she fell and she hit her head on the sink in the prison cell. And then, because of that, she ended up going to the hospital. And when she went into the hospital, they kept her chained to the bed the entire time and had 2 security guards there. Now, imagine that you're sleeping, you're in of sleep, out of sleep. You need to, do your own thing when you're sleeping. Imagine someone watching you the whole time. So she basically just asked the doctor. She said, "Fine, I'm fine. Just get me out of here, because your wrist, the skin on your wrist starts to hurt. You want some privacy." It's really a big shame, to be honest, on the community that we can't do anything. That's the problem. Because what are you going to do? You're going to storm. You're going to go to the prison. Think about it. You just have to give it attention. You're going to go to the prison. You don't even know where she's staying. Her family half the time doesn't know where she's staying. It's really how to take action. Let's read this. Call Secretary Christy Nome. This person's not listening to us. I can't stand the concept of having nothing to do, like having really no recourse. That's why the Prophet warned us. He warned us long ago. You always have to have an army so you can have your own nation, and that you're not subjected. But by the way, we could be subjected to this in a Muslim nation too. You think Egypt's much better? Sometimes you think, maybe at least a Muslim, if I'm at the mercy of a Muslim, he'll have some rahmah. Really? Go read the biography of Zainab al-Ghazali. What they did to this person. And we're talking about the 50s. 1950s, 1960s, people were not that bad. People were generally in Egypt were wonderful. In Egypt, now you're asking I'm talking like as if I've been there. No, I remember the 80s. People tell me about it, that people were good, people were wholesome. Yet you still ended up with devils ruling. His name was Hamza can't remember his name. Al-Basyuni. Hamza al-Basyuni was the prison. He's in charge of all the prisoners. And he was the torturer of Egypt. Go to the next slide, Elifu. He was the torturer of all the Egyptians. So for me to say, you know what, shoot, we need to have our own nation, our own country. Well, not necessarily. No, that's not a solution, actually, come to think of it, because we did, and look what happened. Hamza al-Basyuni, he sent in dogs, hungry dogs on Zainab al-Ghazali. And I brought this up and I talked about it in last Ramadan's series. Last Ramadan series. Zainab al-Ghazali, dogs were sent in on her. And she was just so paralyzed with the shock that she went into like a protective position. She got fully attacked by these dogs. And all that she could do at that moment was just pray to Allah. Like in her mind. I mean, that prayer must have been so deep. All she would do is just pray to Allah at that moment. Okay. Then she totally passed out from the pain. She totally, completely passed out. When she woke up, she looked up. She started to move. You know when you're going to be in pain. She moved. She felt no pain. She felt no pain. You know you're supposed to be in pain. She moved. There's no pain. She looked down. There was no blood. She touched her. She looked at her clothes. There were no cuts in the clothes. She stood up. She said, "Hold on. Did I just dream this?" She said, "Wallahi, I was awake." She starts going around. She hears a dog attacking other prisoners now. And then to get further confirmation that this was 100% a living, wakeful karama that Allah gave her, the prison guard came, looked from the window, slammed it shut, starts yelling to the head guard. Hamza al-Basyuni himself comes in. He opens the door of the jail and he says to her, "Oh, now you're going to start doing karamas on us?" He said it himself. It's in her biography. What is the biography called? Something like Another Pharaoh or something like that. Modern Pharaoh, some name like that. SubhanAllah. So we can be worse, by the way. Muslims can do far worse sins. It's one of the things that's jaiz for a mu'min. Jaiz does not mean lawful. It means by our religion, by reason. Muslims can end up doing far worse sins than non-Muslims. Anyway, that's not the subject here. The subject is, what is a person to do in this situation except you just be really frustrated that she's being held by ICE. And is there the latest event? Like they have these events where they write letters. Can you look that up? Is there a latest action appeal or something? How old is that? What's the date on that? 1 day ago. Leqaa Kordia spent nearly a year detained at an ICE detection center in Texas. She's 32 years old, Palestinian woman, lived in the U.S. since 2016. She is the caregiver to her U.S. citizen mother. Earlier this week, after suffering a seizure and spending more than 72 hours in the hospital with no updates to her family or legal team, she was discharged, returned to the notoriously harsh Prairie Land facility 1,500 miles from her loved ones. Her family still has no information about her condition, and her lawyers were repeatedly denied access even by phone. Like, what country are we living in here? Leqaa's only so-called offense is speaking out for a free Palestine and daring to raise her voice after losing many extended family members in Gaza. This is what it looks like when the U.S. targets Palestine solidarity. Leqaa is still being held behind bars. We cannot let her be forgotten. Show your support on chuffed.org. Click. Oh, how'd you do that, Adif? I didn't know that was a feature. You just highlighted it and give him the click option. Okay. Let's go, website. Open up. No, it's good question. Good question. I don't even know what this is. Okay, there we go. Okay, I guess click. Why is Palestine next to trans rights? What website are we on here? Click. Click on this website. Oh, that's it. It's featured movement. There's no clicking. Keep going down then. I don't want to be on this website. I'm not interested in this. All right, let's just see what there is. This raising funds? So why don't you raise funds on Launch Good? Keep going down, or maybe search. There it is. Why are we here? Why don't we on Launch Good? At least it's a Muslim organization. Anyway, who cares? Whatever. Keep going. Oh, it's just raising money. She's returned to ICE. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, all we could do is just give updates, maybe raise money to get her a better lawyer or a good lawyer. I'm sure she already has a good lawyer, but that lawyer, costs something. So unfortunately, that's the end of this segment of the live stream with really an inability to take action. Let's read some Hadith Qudsi from Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi, people should read these kinds of books from Ibn Arabi rather than the things that are oftentimes brought forth, which is like the most fringe possible opinion that he maybe has been attributed to him once. Look at his other books. This is nothing but a collection of hadith. Okay. Mishkat al-Anwar, which is Hadith Qudsiya. Okay. What's the Aqidah question? Let me read this Hadith Qudsi while you pull that up. This is the most important Hadith Qudsi regarding divine justice. O my slaves, I have forbidden oppression for myself. That means that the Creator can do what he wants with his creation, but he has forbidden himself. So it's rationally possible that he do whatever he wants with his creation by Sharia and by reason. Or sorry, by reason only. But by Sharia is what God said. What God said himself is that he will not do this. So a dhulm, oppression, is by Sharia impossible for Allah, because he himself forbid it. And now, what is oppression? Divine justice is that if you do good, you get compensated or rewarded. Compensated in this life. Or rewarded means you get compensated and you get divine love, which is rewarded in the next life. That's the difference between. That's why Jazakallah is not necessarily, that's not a complete dua. Jazakallah means may God compensate you. May God give you the jazak that you deserve. Wait, hold on a second. Does that mean something like justice or mercy or what? Because jazak, sorry, Jim, Zain, Alif, Hamza, it can be good or bad. That's why we always say Jazakallahu khairan. Khairan because it is maf'ul bihi. I have forbidden oppression for myself. You will not suffer anything except that Allah also compensates you. So both things. You do good or you suffer, you get compensated. Simple as that. Oppression does not mean he gave one person a certain blessing and give another person another blessing. That's not what we're talking about here. That's not what divine justice is. To give everybody the same thing. No. So do not oppress one another. O my slaves, all of you are astray except for those whom I have guided. I seek guidance of me, and so seek guidance of me, and I shall guide you. All of you are hungry except those I fed. Seek your food from me. I feed you. All of you are naked except those I've clothed. So seek clothing of me. I shall clothe you. You sin by night and day, and I forgive all sins. Seek forgiveness of me, and I forgive you. He will not attain harming me so as to harm me. He can never harm God. And will not attain benefiting me so as to benefit me. Imagine this. Can you harm the sun? Can a human being harm the sun? If a person hurls insults at the sun all day and all night. Does it make a difference? Say, okay, well, that analogy doesn't make sense because the sun's not rational. All right. If I'm sitting here hurling all sorts of insults at Michael Jordan, do you think he gives a hoot what you say? Oh, my slaves, we're the first of you and the last of you. Of course, there's no analogy of the creation to God. But if the analogy is that if you can not even visualize this towards a creation, then you're definitely not towards the creator, right? Can you go and try to, with yourself, destroy a mountain? Just with yourself? Of course not. So the likeness is, min al-awla, if you can't do it to the creation, you can't do it to the creator. That's the locus of the analogy. O my slaves, we're the first of you and the last of you, the human of you and the jinn of you, the most pious to be on the most pious heart of any man of you. Meaning that Allah answers his prayer. That would not increase my kingdom in anything. That means if every single one of us were the most pious person in the world, it would increase Allah's kingdom. So this is like answering back to Zeus and stuff, that pagan idea that they need God. O my slaves, we're the first of you and the last of you, human of you and the jinn of you, to be as wicked as the most wicked heart of any one man. That would not decrease my kingdom in anything. O my slaves, we're the first of you and last of you, the human of you and the jinn of you, to rise up in one place. And every single person of you were to request everything they could fathom in their minds. Okay? That's my wording right there. Because he says here, make request. So I'm adding in it, every single one of us were to sit and list every single thing that you could possibly fathom to desire. Okay. And I gave every single one of them what he requested. That would not decrease what I have more than a needle decreases the sea if put into it. O my slaves, it is but your deeds that I reckon up for you and then recompense you for. So let him who finds good praise Allah, and let him who finds other than that blame none but himself. All right, Elephant, I see what you're highlighting here. As soon as you click off that, who's saying what? Open your heart to Jesus. My heart's more open to Jesus than you, because in my religion, Jesus wasn't crucified. No, my heart's more open to Jesus than you, right? He wasn't crucified. That's the first thing. And he's coming back. All right, go. All right, first question is, you see this in, according to Maliki fiqh, this is just the head. A head by itself cannot survive, and it's not three-dimensional. Therefore, fully halal in the Maliki fiqh. Now, maybe you should say, okay, well, you should, just out of respect and caution for the other schools of thought, avoid it because it is haram in other schools of thought, right? What's the Hanafi law on pictures?
I have to see, but I believe it's, I actually have to see.
Okay. So what we call mura'at al-khilaf, or just adab, or just, then yes, possibly there is a argument to avoid such a thing, but it's such a good mug. Such a great looking mug. Right? So, but also, I'm all for telling people, you think it's haram. Firstly, you think it's going to be haram. I have this in the masjid all the time, right?
No, it's like to bait people? Or?
No, not to bait people. I mean, it is in me to bait people. But I have it in the masjid all the time. Now, when people come up and they act, like Kari always says, astaghfirullah. I said, Malana, astaghfirullah in Hanafi fiqh, right? Not in my fiqh. This is okay in my fiqh. So in Maliki fiqh, the two conditions are that it could live. You draw it in such a way that it can live. Second condition, it's three-dimensional. That means it has a shadow. That would render it haram. And that's what we have to avoid. That's what we have to avoid. So that's the answer for him. Oh, come on, bro. You're asking me about this picture, but your name is Ham. 786. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before he eats his ham. 786 is Bismillah, right? Isn't it?
This was a question, by the way.
No, the one above it. Look at the
Yeah.
one above it. Ham 786. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But he's just asking for clarification, so that's a clarification. Now the next question from Anime V1604. I haven't watched the live stream, so I don't know if this was explained further detail. So if someone believes that something has the power to create independently of Allah, that is kufr and shirk. Bid'ah mukaffir, 100%. But if someone claims that Allah granted a thing the ability to create independently, this is not kufr, this is bid'ah. Mufassiqah. Yes, that's correct. How does this distinction make sense? Granting something the ability to create independently still seems an attribute of Allah. No, because in this case, that person is holding that Allah exists and that the independence is dependent. So it's murky at this point. So it's therefore bid'ah mufassiqah. The first one was bid'ah mukaffira, kufr, completely. Paganism almost. Another god.
This is the position of the Mu'tazila who say that something was given the independent power to create.
That's the position of the naturalists. I don't know if the Mu'tazila held it, but the naturalists held it. I can't remember if the Mu'tazila held that or not. You might be right.
Mu'tazila say, I think, that Allah is supreme in ability to create, but when something is bestowed a certain quality, it's becoming intrinsic to that quality.
Yeah.
Fire can only burn, nothing else, because like Allah is still the wild, but in this case, you're still attributing an intrinsic property to things. Yeah.
So to say that he granted, it's still granted, even if afterwards he acts independently. But because you said it's still granted, then you've removed absoluteness from that item of nature. And that's why Sidi Ahmed al-Dardir and our ulama al-Asha'ira, they rendered it down as bid'ah mufassiqah, because that person still believes in Allah. They still hold Allah that is only absolute. Then he gave them, it's basically like he gave them that power to do something. Very similar to the king and the prime minister. King stamps a prime minister, okay? And then the prime minister can do whatever he wants. But the prime minister, clearly, nobody confuses the prime minister with the king. Okay? And that's a likeness, again, of that. Granted, so let's read the rest of his question. Independence, by definition, implies relying on Allah. So the independence in that case is independence after being granted. Just like a prime minister is granted absolute ability to act in the kingdom. So that's why they did that. And in any time that you have a debatable matter, is it kufr or is it not kufr, you're better off to side on bid'ah mufassiqah, which is innovation that negates your good deeds, rather than removing someone from Islam altogether. How is this meaningfully different from attributing to Allah something else that does not befit him, such as lying, and on what base would this not also? So that's basically, we've answered it. Let's now move to a question on allotting zakat for lobbying, for political lobbies. Let's cover this question today. Let's read the fatwa that is the Fiqh Council of North America, published on its website. It's a joint fatwa issued by the Fiqh Council of North America and the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. Now, I have to say something here. What is our perspective, Safina Society, myself, a lot of other people that we associate with? It's that we are very cautious about fatwa, and that fatwa should be given can be given by the elders in each madhab, and they would be mujtahid and nawazil. Mujtahid fi nazila, like that, which means he gives ijtihad on things that are emergency situations or new situations. If not emergency, new situation. For example, cryptocurrency is not an emergency, but it's a new situation. And he does so through analogies within the madhab already, as opposed to diving into the book and the sunnah and extrapolating the evidence himself. That's the work of a mujtahid mutlaq. Okay? So that's essentially it's a very conservative position. You probably won't be wrong when you act like that and take those positions. All right. So again, to repeat, the established leaders of the madhabs give fatwa using the madhab and analogies within the madhab, as opposed to diving deep into the book and the sunnah themselves, which is the work of Mujtahid Mutlaq. Now, what I see in this fatwa, the first and the deepest methodological difference is that this one does a little bit of both. Does a little bit of both. Number one, it does go into direct textual evidence of Quran and Hadith, which is the work of a mujtahid, right? But it also does go into the works of the different madhabs, seeking to support that. And then it draws an analogy. Okay, it draws an analogy. So the first piece of evidence that they give here in this fatwa is that they list out the 8 categories that can receive zakah, which we all know from the Quran, Surah At-Tawbah. The poor, the indigent. The poor has, but not enough. The indigent has nothing at all. Okay. Those employed to administer it. So zakat distributors who are dealing with hundreds and thousands and sometimes millions of dollars in order to make it's a full-time job. Sometimes it's a part-time job. He's not going to do this as a volunteer. B, so that he doesn't get greedy. I'm dealing with this money. Don't worry, you're going to get some. Okay. So al-amilina alayha are the administrators of zakat. I wonder about some people who say that, for example, Alif, can we go to this shot, the shot that you're, there. I wonder when people attack donation relief organizations, and they say they take 7% overhead, 8%, 20% overhead. Zakat itself, the obligation they're allowed to take from it. What do you want? 100% of my charity to go to? You're living in a naive land. Think about it. You're living in La La Land. The Quran itself tells you, al-amil ala zakah ya'khudh min az-zakah. So what is the issue here? What world are you living in? Who paid for the website? Who pays for the Stripe account? Who pays for the interface that collects the money? Who pays for the graphic designer? What are you expecting here? Right? So what's the answer to that? Oh, someone should donate that. Then it's a donation, right? It's the same thing. Someone should donate those expenses. Then it's a donation. It's the same exact concept. So zakat itself, the administration is paid for it from zakat. All right, that's another subject. Number 4, category 4, those whose hearts are attracted to the faith. Okay. Al-Muallafa Qulubuhum. This is what we call shibh al-mudaf. You studied that, Alif? Shibh al-mudaf. Al-Muallafati Qulubuhum. It's a irregular idafa construction. Look it up online and we can talk about it in a second. Okay. No, Lugha, Arabic. Shibh al-mudaf. Freeing slaves, those in debt, and for Allah's cause. What is Allah's cause? The military, the soldiers. And for the needy, for the needy traveler, the traveler who needs help. Now, we all agree on that. No one's going to differ on that. And even before I continue, I want to say what is the category of ikhtilaf here? This ikhtilaf, this level of is number 1. It's not in aqidah. It's not in belief, matters of aqidah. So therefore, it's not going to enter into any kind of heresy. Number 1. The maximum this could enter into is an error that is sinful in nature. That's a max somebody could say. Yeah, an error. Bid'ah غير مفسقة. Bid'ah غير مفسقة. In error, the fatwa was wrong, but we don't say that it nullifies his deeds. is outside of Ahl Sunnah, just so we know what category of difference of opinion we're talking about here. And the authors, the rights of brotherhood are still due to them, because this, whatever position you fall on this subject matter. But it's more of the higher levels of disagreement because of the nature of it's an obligation. Zakat is mentioned repeatedly as the second most important obligation. Salah and zakah all over the Quran. Now, the first premise they list here, I'm very just sort of wondering and curious about it, because the first premise is that at the Battle of Hunain, the Prophet gave out spoils of war to the chiefs of the Arabs, to quell them, to calm them. Okay, the Prophet wants them to enter Islam from themselves, right? And they got stubborn, so you had to get conquered, right? After many, many years of da'wah, 13 years giving da'wah and you abusing us. And then we got our own city. And then we went back and forth. And you just got totally outmaneuvered by the Prophet ﷺ, because number one, la yantiqu anil hawa. He's not thinking from his own self. Allah also gives him. Everything the Prophet said is in religion is wahi. Number one. Number two, every single prophet is of the highest level of fatana. So he completely outclassed all of you. A new city, Yathrib, became Medina. Completely within 4 or 5 years, or we should say more than that, longer than that, right? Just a short amount of time, less than a decade, completely outclasses all of you. And now Mecca and Taif are submitted to him. Mecca, at least respectively, put up the white flag. They got to keep their money. Taif got emotional, made a stupid decision. That's why you're number 2 city. You're not the number 1 city. Mecca was the number 1 city. Taif was the number 2 city. And they met the Prophet at the battlefields and got taken to school. Okay? Now the Prophet owns all your wealth now. But the Prophet's not there for wealth. Islam is not there to just to take people's money. Yes, it's lawful because you fought us. We could have died. Caused us a big headache. But the Prophet's there to guide them. So what does he do? He gives it back. And what does he say? I only did that to win them over. The Prophet comes to the earth to guide the people into Islam. Okay? And guide the people to the truth and connect people to their creator. That's literally what a messenger does. So what is the best way? They just went through, deservedly, a tough situation of getting conquered. Humiliated in front of all the Arabs. Humiliated in front of his wife. Humiliated in front of his daughter. In front of his son. So what does Allah, the messenger, do with all his wisdom? He gives them animals. He gives them gold. Some of the leaders of Taif came out of this loss richer than they went in. Just think about it. When you deal with the messenger of Allah and you just do a little bit of good, you're just going to have a deluge of goodness come back to you. Okay. Some of them came in, and I know I'm digressing here, but it's amazing point. They came out of it richer than they went in. Okay. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it to win them over. And it's also reported from Ibn Abbas that some of them were so nasty that the Prophet ordered Bilal and other Sahaba to give them a lot of wealth to shut their mouth from the criticism, from the attacks. They were attacking. The Bilal came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, Messenger of Allah, these people just keep talking bad things about you. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, close their mouths with gifts from me. Keep giving them gifts. Okay. They remained silent. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq also, he gave spoils of war. He gave wealth to non-Muslims during his khilafah. Okay. Because we're trying to keep the union together of the ummah. Wonderful evidences as stories of how to interact. But in the khilafah of Umar, the power of Muslims was so strong, there was no need to do this. So therefore, in times of strength, we don't need to worry about Muallafa Qulubuhum. We don't need to buy and give people in order to affect their behavior. You're strong and powerful enough. So he decided there's no need for this. Why did he decide that? He decided that because the circumstance doesn't need it. Okay. Okay. The most authentic reports deem that all of this was done with spoils of war. Okay. Spoils of war. So now my question becomes then, how is this relevant to the subject matter? They say, the authors of the fatwa say, some of them were cited by scholars who allowed giving zakat to non-Muslims as incomparable cases. Okay. So, first of all, in the time of the Prophet and the Sahaba, they gave to the Muallafa Qulubuhum to calm people down, to make them come closer to Islam, to stop them from harming Muslims, etc. The Prophet's action, Abu Bakr's action, was with spoils of war. Ulama then took that as the example of how to apply the Quranic verse. And that's what they're explaining here. So the Quranic verse clearly says Mu'allafat Qulubuhum. So therefore, zakah can also be used in such cases. Okay? And who establishes this? Okay, so let's actually read what they say. They firmly establish a broader principle. At times, the public interest may require allocating funds even to wealthy non-Muslims, to the wealthy, or to non-Muslims, or to those of questionable personal character, when that secures a general benefit for the Muslim community. There's no point of disagreement so far. Okay? Let's take a look at Ibn Qudama, because that's the first text from jurisprudence that they bring. Yes. Is there a non-Hanbali one? Okay. In his Umdah, he says the al-mu'allafati qulubuhum, they're the leaders who have authority in their communities, and it is hoped by giving them something that their evil will diminish. Or they may have faith. They enter Islam. Or if they're brand new Muslims, their faith is strengthened. Or that they may be repelled from the Muslims. In other words, they turn back from attacking Muslims. What does that mean? For example, Genghis Khan is coming to conquer our city. Hey, Genghis, could you take these couple sacks of gold and go somewhere else, right? Sure, I'll do it. It's a deal. Strike a deal. Okay. So it's established that he would do it. Next time around, next spring, he got the itch and he wants to conquer our city again. Hey, gang, it's us again. All right, listen, what do you want? How about the same amount of money? No, more. All right, but you're sure you're going to, but you go take your activity somewhere else. Yes, no problem. Okay. So you give him zakah and he leaves, goes back to Mongolia. You can use zakah. That second time around, you can use zakah. Why the second time around? Because you got to make sure it's not just an extortion scheme. You got to make sure he's actually going to do it. You have to have some level of certainty. What's the certainty? The past precedent. The past precedent, last spring, when old Ging came to conquer our city, we gave him the money and he left. Okay, so we know that he's all about for the money. That's all he wants. All right, we'll give you some extra money. He says, no, this spring, it's double. All right, fine. We'll give him double. We'll give him from zakah. And he leaves. That's allowed in Islam. Okay. Or you have a king. He's 50-50. And if we are really nice to him, he may actually enter Islam. Or he may let us do our thing. Give zakat to him. Ibn Arafah specifically notes that al-mu'allafatu qulubuhum, there are people who we want them to enter Islam. We want it's all about their heart and their harm. It's about their heart and their harm. We want their heart to come near to belief. Brand new convert in Islam. Brand new. Wouldn't it be nice to get $1,000, $2,000? What if a whole family, that German family, there's so many pictures went around. So much so, I didn't even know if it was real or not. An entire family, like 6 people. 6 kids, 2 parents, middle class, suburban. They all entered Islam, like according to this image, this picture that went. I think it's true. That's the thing. I think it was just a genuine conversion from the parents, and then the kids followed along. So when you got people like that who clearly their life is already good, and in normal cases, of course, they wouldn't take zakat, but now you want to really, at any minute now, these people could go back to their former life because their former life is good. So in order to hopefully have a good association between their conversion and their Islam, which surely they would lose a lot. If you're in the German suburban family, you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose some friends. Your parents may give you problems. The grandparents may be upset. The kids at school may say stuff to you. But what happens now if they get a nice $5,000 check? Zakat can be used for that. And it is true. People just say, well, I'll just give sadaqah. There are a lot of wealthy people who would not even think to give large sums of money if Allah had not obligated it. There are some people, I've been sort of approaching them to help out at the soup kitchen a lot. They don't give money. But when it came to a zakatable cause, they give tons of money. Because their level of, not to make it pass a judgment, but to describe them, their level of charity, it's almost like what's necessary. That's all they do. They're not very charitable beyond zakat. That's why it is important to have zakat. To discuss zakat is very important because more money is going to be given with zakat. Okay, from a lot of people, than their sadaqah. That's why this is important. That's why people want things to be zakatable, zakat eligible. Ibn Arafah says something similar, and he says they can potentially cause harm to the Muslims. They are Muslims of weak faith. Okay. Oh, I don't have my phone on me, but I saw the exact quote from Tariq Putnam. Okay. And what Zakah, Ibn Arafah. Quote, type in Zakah Ibn Arafah. Click and see if it comes up. No, it was in Telegram, that's why. That's okay, no problem. All right. Ibn Taymiyyah also stated that this category includes non-Muslims for whom zakat helps in repelling their evil from Muslims. So same as mentioned by Ibn Qudama. Okay. Hanbali school. Now, here's something just in the, I don't know if this was persuasive for persuasive purposes, but they then enter a paragraph here on Rashid Rida. But maybe this is just for persuasive writing, but with all respect to Rashid Rida, he's not someone to be quoted in a fatwa. He's lived in 1905. He died. He's not an authority in any school of thought. His works in jurisprudence are not a hujjah in any curriculum in the entire ummah. And that's with all due respect to him. Okay. So I'm not even going to, that's just, in the terms of an argument. Now, again, this could be persuasive because when you're listing name and name and name and name, a common reader is going to say, oh, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because then he goes, Yusuf al-Qaradawi died 2022. This is also not a base of evidence in any madhab. With all respect, again, to Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, but that's not, when you're writing a fatwa, you're making analogy. Okay, now, let's see what he did say. Rashid Rida says it includes those whose heart is desired to soften towards Islam. Okay, no disagreement. Or to affirm their Islam, no disagreement. Or to repel the evil from Muslims, no disagreement. Or to utilize their service to defend the Muslims, no disagreement. Okay, no disagreement. And his summary of the previous things here. Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradawi said the same thing. Well, so contemporaries are essentially saying the same thing Ibn Qudama and Ibn Arafah said, then I can only, it's just repeated. Okay, for whom it is intended to incentivize their hearts to convert to Islam. This is Shaykh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, or strengthen Islam, stop their evil from Muslims. Okay, no problem. Then Sheikh Abdullah ibn Mani' and the Council of Senior Scholars of Saudi Arabia and a judge The Higher Court of Appeals in Mecca. He writes, if Muslim minorities are living in non-Islamic countries ruled by non-Muslim governments, and it becomes evident these minorities are in circumstances that call for winning that government's goodwill, so that it will attend to their condition and safeguard their rights and freedoms, and assisting that government from the zakat allotment from the Muallafa Qulubuhum in a way that secures these Muslim minorities' support, respect, standing, and empowerment is warranted, and its permissibility is derived from realizing the public interest. Okay, here, 2 points need to be mentioned. Number one, what was swapped out was a person for the government. And that's the first discussion point. To swap out or to separate that zakah has to be given to a person. Okay. Now this is saying to give it to a government. That's the first thing that requires, that's the first leap. Up to now, everyone has said the same thing. This is the first leap. Okay. Now, second thing that's important, in a way that secures for these Muslim minorities. Brothers, take the couches. Take the couches. Marhaba, we got a group from New York here. What are you guys doing here? Huh? Yeah, but no, you just happen to be visiting NJ or what? MashaAllah, good. Cometh and sitteth. Turn their mic on, ya Alifu.
Someone wants to speak.
Yeah, if you want to speak on this couch right there. And watch the bag from knocking off the camera and all this stuff. So we got what I had. Ayan, I always do that. Ayan, Juwan, Hassan. Rhyming names here. No, not related. Okay, good. Okay, so that's the first thing. So that's the first leap, because there's nothing wrong with what he said here except that he didn't say to a person. Keep in mind, zakah categories are all to people. They have to be given to people. Zakah is not to be given to, like, you can give it to an organization who will eventually give it to a person, yes. But to give to a cause, for example, no. It has to end up in the hands of a person that can take an action. This is the first leap, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Mana, in which he states that it can be given to to the government. Right? Wealth is a means and not an end. And the end is the existence of an integrated, compassionate, cohesive Muslim community, etc. Given the reality that in Western democracies there is no single leader, so here now we have to talk about, this is the hairy point here. In Western democracies, there's no single leader. I think Joe Bradford's response is going to talk a lot about this. Say that, who are you giving your zakat to? How are you ensuring any of this? Okay. Rather, it's an electoral body. So zakat being used for political influence for the benefit of the ummah would then apply to members of the political body that wields the power of legislation. So that's the qiyas right here. Rather than giving it to a person whom I know by precedent can avoid a harm for us, can deflect a harm, could stop harming us, or come closer to Islam. Now we've entered into giving the zakah to the political process, which is not a person. That's the issue here. And that's why the for madhab-based jurisprudential thought is at issue with this fatwa. Secondly, the broadening of the phrase political influence. That's very broad. And if you notice, the Muallafa Qulubuhum is essentially to stop someone from harming you. So zakat can be used to stop harm. But to gain benefit now, it's not mentioned there. Yes, for the person to lean him over to enter Islam, that's totally personal. It has nothing to do with politics or the benefit of Muslims. That's the personal part of it. Someone's on teetering. Maybe we should give money to Anthony Gloria. But then, you know what I'm thinking? Like, subhanAllah, you sort of open yourself up to a little bit of like exploitation, right? Because, hey, guess what? I'm sort of hanging around the Muslim community. They give me this wonderful gift, financial gift, a check I got. Right? I wonder why. It's because Muallafa Qulubuhum is if you're on the fence, you can take zakat from them. All right, I'll stay on the fence then, right? So you'd have to put classes here. You'd have to say, all right, you're going to get a little zakat if you're on the fence, a lot more if you take your shahada, right? And then, we discovered this. Okay. Hey guys, I'm Muallafa Qulubuhum. I'm about to harm you guys. I'm going to pass a terrible bill unless I get some Muallafa Qulubuhum zakat. So we have to keep in mind of the exploitation of this, because it's almost like opening up to extortion. You're opening yourself up to being extorted. Okay. In the absence of the Muslim ruler or Wali al-Amr, a group of trusted scholars and reputable jurists will effectively take the role of Wali al-Amr to decide this. You have something to say?
On Twitter, Abdul mentioned masjid and get this. There was some terrorist attack. Right afterwards, he went and he was all Muslim. After 100, like there is no loyalty.
Are they trustworthy? That's why the Hanbali school says that you have to have precedent. You must have precedent, right? He has to have done it before, and that's what ensures some level that he's gonna do it again. No, but who was it who said that? Oh, okay. Okay. Who double speaks?
And we had a problem with Eric Adams.
They all double speak.
We got
yeah. He went to kiss the wall. He had to kiss the wall. They all have to go kiss the wall and bow their head on the wall. So it is true that this fatwa is widening the scope that is found in the Hanbali and Maliki school. So they're recognizing it. That's why I said there's a fundamental difference on the methodology between those who are taking their jurisprudence and sticking to the four madhabs and this approach, because this approach it stretches out without necessarily the same precedent. It pulls analogy where the four madhabs would not go to that length. That's why in the discussions of these things, one person said, listen, whether you tell us this fatwa would not be valid according to each of the four madhabs, someone could just say, so what? I'm not following them. I'm a mujtahid on my own. That's the response to somebody could say that, right? At that point, we're not even talking about this. We're entering in a different level of khilaf, right? So when the four madhabs issue their responses to this, as we're going to read Shaykh Amin Kholwadia's right now, Hanafi response. Keep in mind that we're really just educating people who already are bought into the fact that we really should ground ourselves only in the four madhabs. And we shouldn't do ijtihad outside of that without a precedent within. Yes, if you have a precedent within, and if it's done by one of the elders of these four schools, no problem. But keep in mind that some people say, oh, well, what do I care? I'm actually going outside the four madhabs, knowingly passing this border. It's not a border to me. You have to keep that in mind. Yeah, this is the work of mujtahid mutlaqs. Okay. And I remember all throughout my training as a student, when I would bring something to a sheikh, and I would say, yeah, but there's this hadith. Okay. And he would say, I'm going to explain it to you, but I need you to stop thinking like a mujtahid, mujtahid mutlaq. This is the work of mujtahid mutlaq here. Going directly to sources when you're still just not even a student of knowledge, right? Barely scrapping some ilm. So that's what we have to keep in mind. It's not just a substantive difference, it's a methodological difference too. So he says, it is true that this fatwa is widening the scope that is found in the Hanbali and Maliki school. So he recognizes that. Widening the scope. And I would say that, subhanAllah, it's so important that zakah goes to an individual. And in the dissenting opinion, which we'll also read, it says, innama, only to these categories. Therefore, forget someone who's not from those categories, you've taken it categorically outside of the hands of a person, right? You're not giving it to a person. You're giving it to like a campaign, a PAC. Where it dissolves and who knows where it goes. Speak.
Price of gold gone up so much now. Real amount of people all under the still higher. And us, we now people who fall under one brother, like his son had cancer right after he donated, like so now he's like,
yep.
We realize, okay, in our friend groups and more people expensive. So if we go ahead and this for politicians instead, it's
so that's the persuasive argument that's stating, or it's like the experiential approach to say basically, hold on, we haven't completed the people who don't eat properly at night, or who don't have medicine, or who don't have other needs, who don't have freedom. Like someone like Leqaa Kordia giving her mother zakah so that she can go get a lawyer. That's far more important than anything else, right? But so that's the argument of it hasn't, we haven't fulfilled everyone we know. That's number one. Number two, I'll give you another, what do they call this? Like anecdotal evidence or argument. If I'm glad they opened up this subject of Muallafa Qulubuhum. What if we had done a campaign to take care of regular poor people who are just living around our masajid? Just think about this. A guy lives around the mosque. If he had benefited something every year from the mosque, he would love Muslims. By the third year, he'd love Muslims, right? By the first year, he'd love Muslims. Now listen, and downstairs we have in the soup kitchen a tenant. ICE took the tenant away. Now daughter, mom, son, other daughter, 4 people are living downstairs. Their life has become significantly harder now. Significantly harder. Shouldn't they get some benefit from us? Isn't that like far more concrete in front of me than to put it into a PAC, for example? I'm putting out questions here, and that are fair questions. So what happens if we had a campaign for the grassroots? Anybody in need or anyone not in need living across from a masjid gets a nice check every year. This guy's going to love the masjid, right? That's mu'allaf qulubuhum, right? They're guaranteed. Exactly. And even if he's not even hungry, right? What if he wants us to paint the walls in his house and he can't afford it, right? He's good, but we want his heart to come closer to us, right? Wouldn't that be a more concrete? So again, that's not a jurisprudential argument. That's a experiential, anecdotal, and persuasive argument. Because this, when they say this, it doesn't deny what we just said. Because they can just say, yeah, both are fine. So that's why it's not a legal argument against this. And I'm personally not authoring anything against this by myself. There's a group of Malikis, group of Shafi'is, group of Hanafis, group of Hanabila that are going to author and write together so that nobody makes a mistake. And they're just going to represent what their opinion is, what the madhab says. Okay. All right, so let's continue. Those rules generally speak about politicians who already hold real influence and are obeyed in the community. I'm very happy that they mentioned that, because that's what all the books and the quotes on this subject matter, they say. Okay, like Sayyidun muta'un fi qawmih, or here min ru'us al-ashair al-muta'in, heads who are obeyed. Okay, guaranteed. If this guy turns, the whole thing turns. Okay? Like a CEO in a company. If I go to so I wonder then, by this analogy, shouldn't we then go to the owners of newspapers? Hey, listen, what is it going to take you? Let's just sit at the table. What is it going to take to just shut up about Islam? Jeff Bezos, he owns the Wall Street Journal, right? What is it? Washington Post. What do you want? Essentially, right? New York Times was owned by a family for a long time. What do you want? Okay. Let's not even just say it so directly, but you know what we're talking about. What could we do for you? Wouldn't that also apply at this point? Then stop publishing. That would be a more concrete, because here's the thing: a CEO. My point is, a CEO, it's more direct than a politician. A politician, he's not even in charge. He's the employee of the people, and the people are a wide conglomeration of different opinions. So he's got to go lie to one group, lie to another group, put on 10 different faces in order to get elected. Then when he doesn't act on his own belief, he acts on what is constituently and politically is going to work out. That's why Bill Clinton on certain subjects like marriage, you find him like in 1980 he has opinion, 1990 he has opinion, 2010 he has an opinion. Yeah, because as the population change, he changes with them. So in a democracy, do we even have this concept of politicians with absolute obedience or even obedience? Yes, they have influence. There's no doubt about that. But is the influence near to the high level of speculation we call ghalabat al-dhann, that we could say, yeah, we can deal with this guy and get a straight answer from him? Yeah. And even I've always said this to people, but they always tell me politics is no longer what they call it, transactional. It's general. I get it, right? So that means then maybe zakat shouldn't be the way, right? Because you just generally have to be supportive, and then someday you'll get something back. It's not going to be one for one, right? And I understand that. He says, not those who hold partial influence, like a member of parliament or Senate or Congress, okay, or those seeking such a position. Understandably, some of the scholars who are committed to strict adherence to a madhab may feel uneasy with this extension. Some of us didn't like this because it makes it sound like some crazy minority. No, isn't that all scholars, right? Name me one scholar in our history from, let's just cut off this century, from 1900 until Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Give me a alim. List me 10 who said, I'm on my own. Even Ibn Hazm, he said he's a Zahiri, who's the most on his own. Even Ibn Taymiyyah, who goes against many matters of consensus with his own fatwa, he said he's a Hanbali, right? So maybe that's what they mean by strict adherence to a madhab. But is there anyone even close to their level of knowledge today? Everyone's going to be within the madhab as best as they can. Okay. They may feel uneasy with this extension, but this is precisely where legitimate ijtihad is warranted. Thank you. Isn't this exactly what I've been saying from the beginning? He says that there's a methodological difference in this approach, which is basically saying we understand the lines of the madhabs are here, and we are going past it. Okay, so that's why there's a whole different framework of jurisprudence on this. And what are you going to say to such a person? Well, so that's your approach. That's really the point of discussion here, is who can do that? How would they prove themselves to the people that they're worthy of following to go against a massive heritage of scholarship? And that's where ultimately it's going to end up on that subject matter. It's going to end up on, what do you believe is more worthy of following and living your life, religious life on, and are your obligations? A massive heritage of Islamic scholarship that continues till today, or those who say, yes, we will go beyond those boundaries and give new fatwa, completely new fatwa. So if we apply the rules with strict adherence to classical conditions, which it should be noted are largely ijtihadi in nature as well, this would weaken the practical functioning or aims of the Sharia for this category. I disagree at all. I'll tell you why I disagree completely. Because if we were to actually consider Muallafa Qulubuhum, then all the neighborhoods, all the people who live around Muslims, And we wonder, like, what do they think of us? What can they do against us, for us? Do they like us? Do they not? Do they love Islam? Are we making them love Islam? Are we making them hate Islam? Is the adhan really bothering them? Well, guess what? If the adhan goes off and that building sends me a check of $2,000 every year, I love that adhan. It costs me nothing, right? Think about that. I think the actual understanding, and most people don't understand, I guarantee you, go to the board of your mosque right now, and so this non-Muslim neighbor of yours who's been staying silent, maybe we should give him a gift, right? They'll think, no way, we'll never give zakat. He's not a Muslim, because they don't understand. Actually, the classical understanding of this would, if we truly understood it, would broaden it. I think we should all start exploring it. Now that they've opened the subject on Muallafa Qulubuhum, which is Jazakumullahu khair, and they did that, right? We should actually start applying it. I think that's on the ground more concrete, more influential, even for zakah, right? Muallafa Qulubuhum, even for zakah. Because Muallafa Qulubuhum means this guy interacts with us all the time. We hope that it's not that he's not gonna harm us. We're not worried about him harming us. Once the masjid is built, you can't go to the zoning and say, I want it unzoned for a mosque. He's going to call the police and say the cars are here. That's not what we're worried about. The cars are blocking the road, the driveway, etc. That's not what you're worried about. That's just a minor harm. That wouldn't even be classified as the harm that would get zakah. But isn't our purpose dawah? Do we not want the neighbors of the mosque to love Islam? As the Prophet ﷺ said, we do it to win them over. So I would like to see the fuqaha and a madhabi fiqh council to issue fatwa on that. It's a very concrete thing. We pass by this guy all the time. He's become part of our community in a sense, geographically, physically, he's part of the community. Just like the tenants downstairs are part of the community. Every day I walk in, I see one of them. Hey, how are you? Hola. And I learn a little bit of Spanish, try to speak in Spanish, speak English if they speak English, and you start talking. Because you're neighbors now. And they know you're Muslims. You're walking in with a turban, with a thobe, with a hijab. They know you're Muslims. We pray in the back. So shouldn't they benefit from us? To bring their heart, to incline their heart in towards Islam? At least when they go back to Honduras, when they talk to their family in Honduras, they say, we're good here. We got these landlords that are very nice to us. Remember what happened to the tenant who wasn't nice to me? We got her out. Her and her, you don't know this story. Her son ruined it for her. A teenage, not teenage, like 20, 30-year-old son would just pass by and wouldn't even say hello. Where are your manners? I could have given a little bit leeway, but I didn't. And I asked them, come on, I said, we want to use this apartment for other purposes. So she said, okay, yeah, I was thinking of moving out anyway. And they moved out. These little things can affect people's decision-making when it's 50-50, right? When decisions are 50-50, your small behaviors is what tips the balance. I digress. Let's get back to the subject. He said that it would essentially make this category null and void. Probably it would make the category null and void regarding political actors. That I think I would agree with, because political actors here today, if the mayor likes you, does that mean you're going to get anything out of it? No, he could say, the council said no. Right? If the president does not want to wage war, the people want it. The Congress wants it. The Senate wants it. Right? Popular demand wants it, and he goes to war. So you can have a leader of a nation today in a democracy who does not want any of the policies that he's putting forth. Go ask all the Christians. They don't want certain laws. The people demand it. Got to do it. And that my personal belief is I'm against this, but people want it. Nothing I can do. So yeah, for this category, probably I see that it's null and void because the certainty is not there. The power of the politician is much less. In our countries, the power is much higher because they're all dictators, unfortunately, right? Okay. We strongly believe that a careful and principled degree of flexibility is justified, and that this flexibility can easily be drawn from the legal tradition itself. As this fatwa is being written, the world is seeing the impact that specific lobbies have had in unethically shaping domestic and foreign policy and aiding and abetting a genocide against our brothers and sisters in Gaza. It is imperative that people of conscience then also strive. That was that paragraph. You know what that paragraph was? Look what the Jews do, right? How many times you in a masjid or a dinner, you know what the Jews do? Yeah, well, yeah, and we now know what the Jews do. The Epstein files. That's actually how they got things done. Not by donating, not by just giving some money. That's actually how they got stuff done, right? It's extortion and blackmail, sexual blackmail, and all sorts of other satanic stuff. It is imperative that people of conscience then also strive to influence. Now, by the way, influencing is not the subject. That's not the problem. Influencing is totally not the problem, because that's what we would call a maslaha. The difference is it's conflating influence with power. That's the big difference, right? Power is different from influence. We should seek influence, 100%. But zakah requires certainty. That's the difference. So certain things you could do that are nafila, right? Nafila would be acceptable in nafila, but would not be acceptable in fard. Let's take an example. In an obligation, in an obligatory fast, you have to be absolutely certain that you cannot continue the fast because of your sickness. In a nafila, you don't. If I'm just saying fasting a Monday and a Thursday, so, oh man, I got a little bit of a headache. Maybe it's going to go away, maybe not. I'm going to break my fast. I haven't committed sins. But if it's Ramadan, can I make it to Maghrib 50-50? I don't know, I'm 50-50. Can't break your fast. You got to be more close to like 80%, 90%, if not 100%. I definitely cannot. It's unbearable pain. I have to take medicine. I'm sick. Then you can break your fast. You see, the obligations and zakah, sadaqah, obligations and nawafil are different levels of things. I'll give you another example. Fidya and kafara, money or food, has to be given to a poor Muslim. You have to have yaqeen, you have to have certainty, or even ghalabat al-dhan, that the guy in front of you is Muslim in the first place, right? Number two, that he's in need. So you use your mind to discern that. Now, when I come to sadaqah, his religion is out of the equation. I can give sadaqah to anybody. But his neediness is part of the equation, right? Because if I give sadaqah to somebody who's not so needy, the reward is less for sure. Still sadaqah, but the reward is less. So I don't have to think so much about that. Same thing here. The argument from the madhab side is certainty is needed. And this, certainty is not there. In light of both the classical position of Qulubuhum and the modern reality of politics, especially in current climate of genocide taking place, we should remove the genocide part because that's pulling out emotions right here. In a fatwa, you give a fatwa to common people. This is for public, right? For when I say common people, I say non-professional jurists, non-professionals in Islamic knowledge. That means they don't spend a lot of time in it. They're not, but they're smart people. People read this are surgeons. And by the way, the concept of common folk, awam, it's a true concept. I sit with sometimes the most wealthy, educated people in their fields. And as soon as they open their mouth about Islamic law, it's like, whoa. I thought you were smart, right? It's not smart. He's just not his field. If I open my mouth in another field, I'll make the same blunders, right? Yeah. So they're reading this. So I would say that it's not necessarily fair. It's not good to use persuasive writing in a fatwa. It should just be a legal, because now the moment you say, oh, genocide, how could we say no to this fatwa? Genocide's going on here, right? So that's why, personal opinion, it's sort of not fair to make your legal case using persuasive writing. That's why O.J. Simpson trial is a farce. The whole thing was persuasive, except maybe If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit his hand, and I think they said that his DNA was not found at the scene. That's it. Two pieces of evidence. Doesn't make a difference. He could have paid someone with a smaller hand than him. Hello, right? It doesn't make a difference. It's almost like the whole world. But the whole trial was mainly on race. It was mainly on how racist the cop was. The cop who actually procured a lot of the evidence. Turns out that guy was a racist. He had said racist remarks when he was living in North Carolina. Actually, you know what? That is a legal basis because it shows that he could be corrupted, right? So that I take that back. That could be. But in any event, another digression.
So the person,
huh?
If you're critiquing, let's say there's fatwa and they mention genocide, the person critiquing, people will skip over the content of what they look at, like the surface level, like why are you doing it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The members of this committee believe that giving one's zakah for influencing political causes is warranted. So we have went from certainty to influence. That is certainty to influence, and a person to a cause, right? There's a big difference. Person and cause. So that's the mahal al-nizah right there. Firstly, as a default, these are the conditions now. How many conditions are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Joe Bradford's article on this is all about this. It's one thing to have a fatwa. It's another thing to have a fatwa that we can actually act on. That's practical to act upon. That's a difference. Imagine I say to a group of kids, you can eat pizza and cake and grape juice on the white carpet in the family room, which has a white carpet. But there are 5 conditions. Okay. You have to use a certain kind of cup that doesn't spill. You can only fill your cup halfway. You have to put a piece of tarp there first. Right? At some point, you're almost asking for trouble because you allowed it. You said yes, but you put conditions that they're never going to keep up. Right? You have to not move while you're drinking. You have to make sure that you have a tray under the plate. You can't hold the pizza up without bringing the plate with it. You are asking for trouble because they're not going to keep these conditions. That's essentially the perspective Joe Bradford looks at. Is it an executable, what do you call it in computer? Executable file? Oh, you guys don't know that? EXE, right? .exe. Okay. Executable file. Actionable item. All right. Firstly, as a default, reputable Muslim institutions collect and distribute zakat funds on behalf of the body of Muslims in any locality or country. Okay, no problem. These institutions should be composed of a diverse group of scholars and relevant specialists and operate with full transparency and accountability so that trust is built and maintained in the community. The category of al-Muallafa Qulubuhum has always been a purview of Wali al-Amr. Hence, individuals should not decide by themselves which candidates and causes are worthy. So basically, you just took it out of the hands of the individual. So therefore, if a person asks me, according to this fatwa, can I give zakat to a PAC? I have to say no, because they said no here. Firstly, this institution exists. Does such an institution exist? Individuals should not decide by themselves which candidates and causes are worthy. It is imperative that the Muslim communities develop and support such institutions and lobbying groups that garner community support, act transparently, earn the trust of the people, and establish a track record of positive impact that benefits ummatic causes. And it is to such institutions that zakat may be given. Can you name one such organization or institution that decides, that believes in this, number one, as a policy? That's it, actually. That's the only condition I'm asking. Where is such an organization that upholds this fatwa and exists? So that just on this, is almost not actionable as a fatwa. I know my tone sounds like very negative about it, but I'm trying to be fair.
Price it where all of the already have an.
You have to separate zakat from sadaqah. What kind of masjid is that? They don't separate zakat from sadaqah? No, you can't give. That's not zakah.
Yeah, the management fee.
They have to have two separate account buckets. That's obligatory. That's obligatory. Then that's malpractice. They should be removed from their positions or educated. These institutions should be annually monitored. So now we have a layer on top of that, right? And regularly audited to ensure that they're doing a job in a manner that fulfills the goals of Sharia category. So, ajib, because you took it out of the hands of the people. Do we have a right to do that? To take zakat out of the hands of people? He says yes, because he's saying here that al-Muallafa Qulubuhum is only in the purview of Wali al-Amr, meaning the leader. And we don't have Wali al-Amr, therefore we have to put a council up. So the first call should be for this council to exist in the first place. Secondly, that the causes for which such funds are spent, as decided by the institution and its advisory board, not the people, not the individual donor, are directly related to benefiting the ummah, either in one's own country or locality, such as countering a clearly anti-Muslim politician with an agenda of harm, or internationally, such as helping a candidate who is opposed to genocide. So wait a second, we did jump to another element here. Because, and this should have been mentioned, we went from the madhabs, a man has the power to stop harm, to a politician who can influence the stopping of harm, to a politician getting into the position to influence. So we're 3 layers down now. So the guy is not even yet influencing. We want to get him to possibly be able to influence. So now we're entering 3 layers down now, right? I think that's what it is, right? I think that's he would be an example. I guess Zahran, because he said he's going to take down the IHRA, which he did. He's going to stop surveillance on Muslims, which he did. Those are nice things. But he's also recently put out a tweet enraged that they took down the LGBT flag. That's where my zakat money's going, right? Well, what if a person says, okay, what if you got 2 councils? One council is looking at Islamic, like the benefit of Muslims, but another council says, actually, I don't think it's that much of a problem if Muslims are hated. I think it's actually better for them. When you're a minority, maybe it's better for you to be hated. It's better for your religion. You're going to hunker down together, unify. They identifies you as a Muslim. You'll identify yourself as a Muslim, right? But then at the same time, those people who hate you so much, they also are bringing a wrecking ball to the LGBT trans agenda. Which one's better, right? An environment where Muslims are not attacked, it's debatable. I think there's benefit in both. An environment where Muslims are free to be Muslim, but also we're going to support the gays and the trans and everybody else. And we've gone over this 1,000 times. Or an environment where, no, we're actually going to go back to how God made things. We believe in God. We're going to say it openly. We're going to celebrate our religion. There's going to be husbands and wives. We're not doing all this stuff with the blue hair and the ring noses and the trans flag and the gay flag everywhere. We're canceling all that. We're canceling pronouns. We're canceling everything. And we're going back to how God made us, but the Christian version. And we hate the Muslim version. So I think you may end up giving zakat to two opposite candidates, right? And again, as an anecdotal possibility, you're giving zakat to two opposite candidates at that point because there's two different philosophies. And people will, my personal opinion is that you do sort of want both to exist. You don't want either one to only have absolute power. It's good because they don't actively attack Muslims. Like liberals, they actively attack belief. I think they you can't even bring up the idea that God exists and this is the truth. They don't believe in that. But it's your truth, and I respect it because it's your truth. That's their usul. But nonetheless, they still do not attack Muslims directly. Muslims can thrive in that society. I don't know if Iman can thrive, but Muslims' life can thrive in that community. It can exist, meaning you can have masajid, no problem.
They're dismissive of Islam because
Open his mic and take it with you.
yeah, so I feel like they're dismissive of Islam because they apply their own experience that they've had, anecdotal experience with Christianity or Judaism,
100%.
and they're like, oh, it's just the same bucket.
100%.
For us, it's like we've thought it through so much more. Like
Our evidences for why God is real, Prophet is real, Quran is true, is so different, categorically different from Christian evidence.
we don't have the problem of evil. We don't
We don't have a problem with evil. We don't have a problem of identifying the truthfulness of our book, the actual existence of our prophet and his words, right?
know
So
that he said what he said.
exactly,
Transmission.
exactly. So
They stop you from talking about that because
Mhm.
they don't want to accept that there's something else.
yeah, so the atheism is the default of that in that group, right? But they will respect you as a Muslim because you chose it, not because it's an absolute. Now you go to the other side, which is probably places in Texas and all these places where they're living closer to the state of nature in that they believe that there are men and that there are women and there are sexual laws, morals, I mean, that you should observe, and there should be a unit that exists as a family, et cetera, but our version and definitely not your version. And they will, obviously, this is what's happening in AIPAC. Conservative Christians are being a full-on attack on Muslims. So that's also detrimental too. We can't dismiss that. Here in the North and in the East Coast, that's like there's something refreshing about that because they do believe in truth. That doesn't really exist here unless you're among some immigrant communities, old Italian guys and stuff like that. Okay. So that's the second point, that it has to benefit the ummah. Okay. But they put it in parentheses here, which is a far more important subject matter, which is helping a candidate who is opposed to genocide. But hold on, we went from influential candidate, like a member of parliament, to now getting the guy into becoming that, into that position. So that's another step down, which is going to be another point of disagreement from the articles written by the four madhabs. Those are coming soon. The goal of such funds must be to benefit the welfare of Muslim community. Hence, any issue not related to the welfare of the ummah cannot be considered zakat eligible. So, but the problem is that a candidate represents 50 things, not one thing. So in the classical position, I come up to you and I say, hey, Genghis, I know you're like into raping and pillaging. Can you skip our city? And he says, yes. Take a sack of gold, right? Like, what is it going to take? 2 sacks of gold. All right, I'll give you 2 sacks of gold. Skip our city, right? I just saved all these Muslims, right? But when it comes to a politician, when I'm paying for him to get into power, he's doing 50 things, right? And maybe one of them may be in our favor and 10 of them not, and the rest neutral. So it gets hairy there. As well, no lobbying should be done with the intention of currying favor for certain individuals in order to further causes not related to the ummah as a whole. But again, that's also a little bit fuzzy, because let's say a politician, he wants to do something good for that we consider good for the community, but he's also, in one of his bills that he wants to pass, he's going to decrease taxes on my industry. So I have two reasons to want him in. So
Trust that the individual speaking to the politician is fully like sincere
mhm.
to be like a vice regent for Allah's will on the earth.
Exactly. Exactly. Thirdly, that there be reasonable signs to believe that such funds would help the cause for which it is being raised. Now, it is understood that no one can be certain of the future. What is required is a strong presumption, غلبة الظن. Okay. All right. Fourthly, so the Hanbali books stated that his past action is what would indicate, not his words. He's a politician. He's a liar by trade, right? They lie. But his actions in the past are really what indicates, what give us that. That's what the Hanabila said when I asked one of the Hanbali scholars. Fourthly, given that this category is one of the 8 in the Quran, and there will always be a need to fulfill all the other categories, in particular the needy and the poor, the council strongly advises that one does not give a majority of zakah to this category alone. Rather, only a portion should be given. We note here that the primary goal of zakah should always be to take care of the poor and feed the needy and the hungry. Muallafa Qulubuhum is secondary goal and should remain as such. As suggestion, not as a legal ruling, perhaps a maximum of 1/8 of one zakah amount be given to this category, while the remaining should be distributed. So wait, not 1/8 to be given to this category, no, 1/8 to be given to the non-existent institution that monitors al-Muallafa Qulubuhum and makes the decisions on it. So let's pull out the calculator here and multiply 8 by 40. Gives us what? 320. 1 divided by 320 equals, because your zakat is 1 out of 40 of your wealth. Take all of your zakatable income, divide it in 40. One of those is for zakah. Now that one, divide it into 8. So that's why 8 times 40, right? Is 320. Put that as the denominator, put a 1 over that. What does that give us? 0.3%. So I could have also have done 2.5 divided by 8. Same difference, right? Same result. Okay. 0.3% of my money would go to this as an advice, because they say it's not a ruling, would go to the institution that determines which politician can get zakah. At that point, why don't I just give my sadaqah? Let's hypothetically say my zakah is $10,000. And I'm going to say now 0.003. Right? 0.3% we said. Didn't we say 0.3? What did we say? Let's just do it again. 2.5 divided by 8 equals, okay, times. Okay. That means, what's the math on that? If I have my zakat is $10,000, right? Oh, 10,000 divided by 8. That's it. 10,000. Some probably mathematician on the stream is going crazy.
1,250.
So if my zakat is $10,000, then $1,250 of that can go to this institution, which as yet does not exist. Okay. Fifthly, there's a fifth. The institution assigned with this task must abide by local laws and take advice of legal counsel to ensure that they do not contravene the country's laws related to campaign finance. Okay? So, yeah, that's fine. That's a given. Whoa, get your face out of my decaf coffee. He saw his cousin on the mug.
How are they so friendly? Like
No, they're because we're nice to them. We give them tuna fish. We give them all sorts of nice food. And I give them freedom too. We let them go in the backyard. And in the spring, they're going to be outdoor cats and they're going to have an outdoor house too. Yeah. Because in the future, they're not going to be allowed in the kitchen.
is it a boy and a girl, or is it?
These are two boys. I just call them Helvetica Bold and Helvetica Light. Yeah, that's true. We should call them that. In conclusion, the members of this council stress the need to undertake the utmost caution when it comes to zakat money and underscore the sanctity and trust. And okay, this is just like a nice conclusion. Okay. And that's it. Because we closed with these conditions, which I was surprised to read the conditions, because the conditions render this thing mute, null and void. Not null and void, but inactionable. Okay. It is inactionable because you're saying it has to go to this institution. Like at this moment, it's inactionable. Tomorrow they could put together such people, right? They could put, but you also have to put together two organizations. They said it has to be monitored. So who's doing the monitoring? All right, let's say we get 10 guys together and you're going to go with, your guys are going to go, the Fatwa will monitor you. No problem. You put the institutions. Now they advise that the person should only give 1/8 of their zakat to this. Okay. So now we're down to 0.3% of my money will go to this institution that has yet to exist. All right. So Joe Bradford says the principle is not the main question. I'm not going to argue that the category of Muallafa Qulubuhum has been abrogated. Okay. And he talks about this. And I want to emphasize too that political activism and engagement, I would hold it as a fard kifaya. It doesn't even make sense logically to exist in a country that's allowing you to take action and not to take action. I don't think that makes sense either. But the question is, should we use zakat for it? That's all.
Was a fard kifaya. Someone has to do it. Honestly,
yeah, someone has to do it.
Wealthy donors.
Yeah, someone has to do it, and it should be basically people who. I actually think the back end scenes are very important, more than the candidates. Yeah. And I think that politics is all lesser of two evils, so shuyukh should not be too close to it. Because shuyukh, this is not a separation of religion from politics, no. It's a separation of jobs, duties. Let me give you an example. If you worked with a Shaykh, and that Shaykh also was a real estate agent, he shows around people to their homes, to homes to buy the home. It's going to be much harder for you to say no and fire him as a real estate agent if he's also the imam, right? So there's a conflict there, right? He's a conflict there. So that we have to understand that there can be conflicts where certain jobs, they're messy. The religious example should not be tied to it. All right, so he also says this is not the first time as a zakat category. We're now reading Joe Bradford's response. This is not the first time as a zakat category has been expanded. The fi sabilillah category was expanded. And a lot of people, they started building the masjid based on that. That's definitely not allowed. Okay? It was for the soldiers. Okay. So he said, so we're summarizing here what he says here. Communities that take all their zakat and put it in the construction of the fund, for example, the construction fund. It's not allowed. Not all of it, not any of it. Okay. Or they hold zakat al-fitr and they don't distribute it before Eid. So in our community, we call for everyone to give zakat al-fitr well before Eid so that we can go buy the stuff. It's not like the old days where you step outside the door. Hey, where's a poor person? Here, is a grain of rice or a bag of rice or whatever. Here's a bag of wheat. Go enjoy yourself. And they are happy and they go and make bread in the house. That's not how it works anymore. You got to go to Costco. You got to go to BJ's. You got to drive around the homes. We don't say to the people, hey, if you're poor, come to the masjid, because that's embarrassing to the people. So we have to drive to their homes. Drop it at the door. Ring the bell and leave. Right? To uphold their honor. All that's going to take days, not just one day. So it all happens in the last 4 days of Eid, of Ramadan. So we have to tell people well in advance, put your zakah al-fitr in the box. Spending zakah money on gala dinners, marketing, construction costs. And then, just as you said, when you try to educate these organizers, who are very smart people, but they're not educated in Islamic law, they become obstinate. They say, no, the fatwa said we can use it first. Fi sabilillah, this is fi sabilillah. No, fi sabilillah has different meanings, different times and places. Okay. Even the verse of zakat doesn't say zakah, it says sadaqat. In that sense, sadaqat means zakah. Right? So why does Allah do this? To separate the scholar from the non-scholar. If you studied, you know what that means. So sometimes things are different to separate scholars from non-scholars. That's why Allah has in it nasikh and mansukh in the Quran, abrogated and abrogating. Edif, are you sneezing because of the cats? All right, he's sneezing real bad. Anyway, the cats are going to be outdoor cats soon. Okay. Classically, the category of collecting was managed by the state. Zakat collections were deposited in state treasuries. In the absence of state treasuries, then we put masajid, Islamic centers, dawah organizations to stand in. This itself was debated by the scholars. Okay. Because the conflict of interest in both the acting as zakat collection authority and simultaneously distributing on the same organization's expense. It's blatantly obvious. To allow a person to both pose as a legitimate authority for zakat collection while also claiming to be the one needing the zakah, that would encourage a lack of oversight and distortion of measure of actual need and can lead to fraud, abuse, misappropriation. Okay, that's all he discussed the fi sabilillah argument. Okay. The fatwa on political campaigns proposes to replicate this pattern with Muallafat al-Qulub. This fatwa is framed with urgency around the crisis in Gaza. That's why I said you got to take the emotion out of it, out of law. But by the time of its issuance in January 2026, the most acute phase of that crisis has passed, and the community was already contending with a different and arguably more immediate set of threats at home: mass deportation, campaigns to remove community members, and attack masajid like AIPAC. He didn't mention that. I'm mentioning that. Okay. These are pressing realities. The fatwa does not name them. The continued appeal to Gaza, while understandable on an emotional level, function less of a genuine assessment of a necessity and more of a way to bypass the harder question of whether this mechanism is actually suited to the domestic challenge. That's why I said, when you're talking law, get to the emotional rhetoric out of there. It's not fair. A fatwa grounded in real conditions would have engaged those conditions directly. Instead, it relies on an emotional frame that, whatever its sincerity, does not correspond to the practical situation it claims to address. The open-endedness of the approach means that the abuse of zakah will become more common in the name of ta'lif al-qulub, as it has with fi sabilillah. What are the questions that the fatwa does not answer? The fatwa stipulates 5 conditions. Let me examine whether any of them can actually be met in the context of American campaign finance. Who is the muallaf? Guys, tell me if you're getting bored of this subject, because we've been talking for a long time. Yeah. Classical application of this category presumes identifiable individuals with authority among their people, whose reconciliation can be plausibly linked to concrete benefit for the Muslim community. The Hanbalis require that the recipient be a leader. He's Hanbali, by the way. A leader obeyed amongst his people while with demonstrable proof. Past behavior. Joe Bradford. Yeah, Joe Bradford is a Hanbali. The question is straightforward. Who is the muallaf when you write a check to a PAC? The candidate, the party, the PAC. That's what we said. Where the zakat goes to a person. But you don't write a check to the person. You write it to a PAC. The candidate doesn't even have control over the PAC. That's the idea of a PAC. He can't control it. Yeah. The limit is so low. right? Yeah, $1,200. So tax was a way for the rich to get around that. So you're not even. So now we're going down one more layer. So we went from the guy in power to the guy who has influence to the guy who wants to get into the position of influence to the people who are supporting the guy who's. We went 3 layers down now, right? 4 layers down now. Okay. The media consultant who produces the advertisement, the voter who sees the ad. So who is actually getting the zakat is the question here. Definitely we're 4 layers down from someone who has power. Yeah.
And if we did like give the right people the right money, we're playing in a game where the rules aren't fair. Like based on the Epstein files, even if we give a lot of money, enough to convince someone, have an opponent who is now extorting people using black magic, doing all this other stuff, and they're literally like catch these people in compromising situations. So no matter how much money we give some of these individuals, come to like and we have like all the political figures compromised in these files. So
you're basically even attacking the premise that AIPAC is a source of influence. AIPAC's influence, because of the Epstein files, people are not now probably less impressed by AIPAC than they were before. People think, oh man, all these politicians serving Israel because of AIPAC. No, it's not. Because you all got caught committing zina, right? You all got caught committing crimes, right? You're all addicted, sexually addicted to whatever he's offering you, right? Who knows what some of these senators, you're a senator, you're a congressman, why do you keep going to Israel? What are they giving you there? What addiction do you have that they're fulfilling? So probably AIPAC influence, which is $150 million. That's what they spend every year. Muslims in America have given over $1 billion of charity since Gaza. That's almost 10. I heard a number 1.5 billion. That's almost 10 times, 10x. Let's just reduce it down to 7x the amount of money Muslims gave in the last year, according to who gave that statistic. I was just at a talk. Sean King gave the talk, and he said, I think it was Sean King. He said $1.5 billion Muslims gave in 1 year to charities in general. And AIPAC's $150 million. That's 10x. Let's make it conservative and super conservative and say 5x. We have the money, right? So, but I think a lot of people, it's not just that AIPAC gave them money. They got something on them. They're playing dirty. And AIPAC lost through the Epstein files. It's not because of you.
There isn't just AIPAC as well. There's Christians for Zionism, which is even bigger.
Thank you. So AIPAC is not the only one. That's why even the political question, do you take money from AIPAC? To me, that's a null and void question, because he can just say no, and he got it from Christian Zionists. He got it from whatever organization they're going to replace AIPAC with. Mm-hmm. I totally agree. You're saying that Muslims in general, they gave to Gaza because it was so vivid and clear. And that proves that it should be from sadaqah. It could definitely not be from zakat, because it's fully preventative, fully strategic, and we promote that. We're not saying that we're against that concept, but the question is, can I take it from zakat or sadaqah? And it's almost like saying that, let's say the New Orleans, back when you guys were probably very young, the dam broke and flooded the entire city of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And so that was a massive crisis. People were donating like crazy to get these people hotels. Just on the spot, they needed a place to stay. They were staying in the stadium in New Orleans, and it was just like completely terrible conditions. Nobody had ability to be comfortable even for 5 minutes. right? The bathrooms were a mess, clogged. It was a complete disaster when they stayed in the stadium. And then they just needed a place to stay. So people were donating like crazy. So is that a worthy cause? Very worthy. This is not zakatable. I'll give you another example. I got food that I'm giving out for fidya. Obligatory fidya if I didn't fast, or if I don't fast permanently, or kafara for not fasting intentionally. And then I see a guy dying of starvation right in front of me, while there's a Muslim there who is a valid recipient, and he is not starving, he's poor. He just never has enough, right? It really benefits him to have a meal for him and his 5 kids, for example. But this guy's literally dying right here. So he's a more dire need than a Muslim. So the answer is I should give him the food, and then I should go back and get more fidya to give to the Muslim. So we don't deny, just because we're saying zakat doesn't go to it, does not deny all of what the amja and fitna people are caring about, which comes from a completely sincere and good intention. And I totally agree with it. It's just the question is, does zakat go there? Yeah.
You know, when Sheikh Omar Salman came here, he mentioned how a lot of these larger organizations are marketing like to raise funds for Gaza without having access to Gaza, right?
Yeah.
So one of my friends who used to teach Zaituna, Arab, he mentioned how Ustad Hatem Bazian, who's one of the founders of Zaituna, mentioned there's over 9 figures of donations for Gaza that are just sitting there in Islam, for Islamic relief in particular, and it's just sitting there, right? And they don't necessarily have even when we donate to these causes, we don't necessarily, they're raising with the idea that they'll be able to give it to them, but they're making that promise at certain times.
That's crazy.
Just
So the execution of zakat is also an issue subject. So now expanding where zakat is going, where the current status of zakat also needs work.
a lot of these organizations have far more power than the ulama have influence over them to make. That's how it feels.
100%. What influence does Adam have today except to just change your mind, to move your heart, to change your mind? That's it. So he says now, all right, the distributed nature of democratic power. So spread out. Legislative bodies, checks and balances, coalition politics. It differs fundamentally from the tribal leadership structure that the classical scholars were addressing. A member of Congress is not a tribal chief whose personal decision opens or closes the door for a community anymore. Not the case. A member of Congress is one vote among hundreds, operating within party structures, committee assignments, donor networks, and electoral pressures. No single contribution can redirect any of this. What constitutes benefit and who measures it? The fatwa requires reasonable science to believe that such funds would help the cause for which it is being raised. This is aspirational language, not an enforceable standard. How are the proposed institutions going to measure political influence from campaign contributions? The documented reality of American politics is that policy positions often do not change based on campaign funding. Our industries spend billions annually on lobbying with mixed results. Muslim financial influence is structurally marginal in the system. What influence precisely are we wielding? If we cannot answer that question with specificity, how can we satisfy the requirement of ghalabat al-dhan, reasonable expectation, that the fatwa demands? What happens when the candidate loses? Campaign donations are inherently speculative. Classical zakat was given to identify individuals. Remember we said individuals for proximate, verifiable benefit. You can verify whether a convert program is reaching new Muslims. You can verify whether a media campaign is running. You cannot verify in advance whether a candidate will win an election. And if the candidate loses, the zakat is gone. It has not been spent on softening anyone's heart. It has not been spent on ads, or it has been spent on ads, consultants, and yard signs. In my published guideline on categories 4 through 8, I stated that zakat given to these categories should be dictated by actual need and overall social benefit. Now, it should be paid on their behalf to their creditors or the services they need, and the recipients should exhibit need by providing bills, receipts, etc. None of these conditions can be satisfied by a campaign donation. Okay. Next, what happens when the candidate wins, then doesn't deliver? So many questions. He didn't even get to yet. I don't know if he's going to get to it, but that institutional body that determines all this. This is perhaps the most important practical question, and the fatwa does not address it. What happens when a candidate wins but does not deliver? Political promises are frequently unfulfilled. Remember Obama? How people thought so much great things were happening, but he also became, what did they used to call him? They used to bomb Pakistan all the time.
More dronings than anyone else.
Drone attack.
Yeah.
Drone strike. They had a name for him, drone striker in chief or something like that. Like he killed so many people.
Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yeah.
No due process. Him and his son went to Yemen.
Yeah.
Just droned him because he was a problem for Obama. Didn't like it.
So what happens now? Not only when he doesn't deliver, when he delivers the opposite. He's a source. He transforms into a source of harm. A candidate who receives support from Muslim organizations may, once in office, face entirely different political pressures. The classical scholars who permitted giving to a chieftain did so on the understanding that the chieftain had the personal authority to deliver on the implicit bargain. That's it, personal authority. Like a CEO, I said, personal authority. You please a CEO, things could happen for you. You please a president, doesn't mean anything. Unless it's a tiny little country where, there's like 1 million people in the nation. The president actually has a lot of power. But here, no. A modern legislator operates under no such conditions. Are we softening the hearts of politicians, or are we enriching third parties? Who serves as wali al-amr? The fatwa proposes that, here's what we talked about. Trusted scholars and reputable specialists will effectively take on the role of wali al-amr, citing al-Juwayni, but citing Juwayni does not create a governance framework. What is the selection mechanism for these scholars and specialists? What is their accountability structure? What prevents conflict of interest when scholars who issue fatwas of permissibility are embedded within the very organizations that would collect and disperse the funds? The fatwa does suggest, as a suggestion, not as a ruling, right, that no more than 1/8 of one's zakah be given to the category. That is a recommendation to the individual giver, and a reasonable one. But it's not a governance mechanism. It does not address the institutional side of the equation. And so, again, that council, you know how hard it is to put together councils? My book detailed the conditions classical jurists placed on zakat collectors under category 3, a 1/8 cap on administrative expenses, a prohibition on personal gifts during employment, preference for employing the poor, and a requirement that the organization solely exists solely for charitable spending and zakat distribution. The fatwa proposes standing institutions to collect and disperse zakat for political purposes, but imports none of these classical safeguards into their design, telling the individual to cap their giving at 1/8, while providing no enforcement controls on the institution, is not governance. It's a disclaimer. What prevents this from becoming permanent? The fatwa is framed around an urgent moment of the institutional mechanisms it proposes. Standing organizations, advisory boards, ongoing collection and distribution are not emergency measures. They are permanent infrastructure. Once established, on what basis would they be dismantled? Every election cycle will present new threats and new opportunities. Every cycle will generate new urgency. So therefore, this category, once opened, will never close. It'll only close when people repeatedly argue these points. What about legal exposure? The fatwa's fifth condition, that the institutions must abide by local laws and take advice of counsel and do not contravene campaign finance laws, is a single sentence doing the work of an entire compliance infrastructure that does not exist, as we said earlier. Doesn't exist. The reality of American nonprofit law is considerably more complicated than this sentence suggests. Most Muslim orgs that would be positioned to collect and distribute zakah operate as 501c3 tax-exempt entities under federal law. Tax-exempt entities are absolutely prohibited from participating in or intervening in political campaign. any political campaign, on behalf or in opposition to any candidate for public office. This is not a gray area. It is a bright line. Crossing it risks revocation of tax-exempt status. The fatwa does not address how a zakat collecting organization could direct funds to political campaigns without jeopardizing its nonprofit standing. Does not distinguish between 501c3 and 501c4. It does not address the legal mechanisms of established separating entities. So you're going to need two entities then. The deciding entity to give suggestions to the zakat entity, but wait a second, the zakat entity cannot give to political causes. Isn't that what he's saying here? So even that wouldn't work around, wouldn't it? Wouldn't work. What is the difference between, but I didn't think about this at all.
Even troll.
Wow. Many people assume that all nonprofits are the same, says LegalZoom. While there are some similarities between different types of nonprofit companies, there are also some important distinctions. If you're starting a nonprofit organization, it's important to choose the correct IRC classification. While you get that tweet for us, the right classification for your nonprofit depends on its mission, blah, blah, blah. A 501c3, its main purpose is charity. 501c4, it's social welfare. Both are non-exempt. Okay. 501c3, you can get a donor deduction. As you know, you give a receipt back and you remove that from your taxes. 501c4 does not. 501c3, no political campaigning. 501c4, yes. Okay. Breaking news. We just defeated Laura Loomer in court. Again, here's what happened. Since 2023, Miss Loomer has been sending monthly checks to CARE as a result of a failed lawsuit she once filed against us and CARE Florida. Yes, you read that right. The America's loudest anti-Muslim extremist has spent years funding America's largest. Yeah. That's hilarious. Last month, Loomer asked a judge to let her withhold her remaining payments based on Ron DeSantis' unconstitutional proclamation targeting CARE in Florida. The court just ruled in our favor, ordering Miss Loomer to finish paying us back. We look forward to receiving Miss Loomer's next check and inshallah once again using her money to defend American Muslims. Way to go for CARE collecting jizya from Laura Loomer, basically. Basically jizya. Can they actually keep going after whoever did what Laura Loomer did? This is a great business.
Texas.
Wonderful business. It's amazing.
Constitution.
Great. 501c3s are private foundations or public charities that are created and operate exclusively for at least one of the following purposes: charity, religion, education, science, literacy, okay, public safety, right? Many churches, food banks, schools are 501c3. The pros, tax exempt. You can receive tax deductible contributions and you can get grants. 501c3 cons, no lobbying or limited lobbying and prohibited from political campaigning. So therefore, this organization, institution would have to set up as a 501c4, correct? Therefore, you can donate to it, or alleged in this scheme, you would give your zakat to it, but you can't get a tax receipt back. The 501c4 is for civic leagues or nonprofit organizations that promote social welfare, certain local associations of employees. Okay. So the pros is tax exempt. It can engage in unlimited lobbying, can participate in political campaigns. Cons, donations are not tax deductible. So therefore, according to this, they would have to be a 501c4. They can't be a 501c3. This institution that's going to have all the scholars that determine if this is zakatable or not. Okay. What is CARE? Look that up for us. What about political pressure on the organizations themselves? There's another dimension here that the fatwa does not acknowledge, and it is perhaps the most dangerous. We have already seen in our own communities how political pressure operates on Muslim nonprofit leaders. Bored Muslims with legal vulnerabilities have been pressured to take public stances to push agendas to align their organizations with political positions that serve external interests rather than communal ones. This is not hypothetical, it's documented. Now imagine layering zakat collection for political campaigns. What is it? 501c3.
Yeah, but have they are 501c3. Charitable education. I never.
Okay. Hmm.
It's really
So in his argument about 501c3 versus 501c4, so let's read that again. That you have to follow the law. Okay. Most Muslims orgs that would be positioned to collect and distribute are 501c3. This org would have to be a 501c4 because by giving to a PAC, you're taking political action. So the only harm there is that you can't get your zakat would not be tax deductible. And Muslims should always try not to save your money, right? And tax, there's tax evasion and tax decreasement. What's a good word to put it? Like decreasing your taxes as much as possible legally. Muslims should all do this. This tax, by the way, is not even. It's a lot of it's going to places we don't believe in, and it's the type of theft in our Sharia. Taxes, they can go to certain things in the Sharia, the protection of the inside and the outside of the nation, maybe emergencies, right? The government by default cannot reach its hand in your pocket and take money. You don't owe them anything. It's like 2% on tea. They threw a revolution. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Crazy. Mm-hmm. 100%. Yep. They've expanded it. So yeah, in an Islamic framework, if you're going to pave the streets, who's going to pay for it? Yeah, the state should pay for it. What if they don't have the money? So we'll all pitch in, but it's got to be itemized. How many houses are in the place? You got 100 houses in the town. You divide the cost over 100. That's part of your tax, right? Stuff like that. The trash or whatever. So, yeah, you gonna say something?
about these American tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fatwa, the next section, he says that the alternative that already exists, the fatwa itself acknowledges in its final paragraph that there should be no two opinions regarding the permissibility of general sadaqah and other types. So that's the solution. That's the correct answer, and that's the answer, sadaqah. No, none of this would be an issue if it's sadaqah. We don't need a committee. We don't need any of this hoopla. We don't need 0.3%. If the camera froze, can they still hear? Okay. I guess turn it on and off. Is it hot in here? It's not even hot. Should we turn the fan on or just turn the thing on and off? All right, he continues. He says, if the community wants to fund political engagement, sadaqah, general charitable contributions, and direct philanthropy are all available. They carry no risk, these things, to the validity of anyone's obligatory worship. They require no fatwa. They impose no condition that cannot be met. And they do not create the precedent of converting a bounded act of worship into a discretionary political funding stream. The fact that these alternatives exist and are uncontested is itself significant. Classical scholars invoke Muallafa al-Qulub under conditions of genuine necessity. Ibn Taymiyyah, who was among the more expansive voices on this category, qualifies his permission with a condition the fatwa does not adequately reckon with. The disbeliever is given if benefit is hoped for through his gift, such as embracing Islam, or to avert harm when it cannot be averted otherwise. When it cannot be averted otherwise is the operative phrase, i.e., when sadaqah is available, then you don't need to touch zakat. There's last resort. Claims of zakat level necessity are substantially weakened when the same objective can be pursued without risking anyone's worship. Very good article here. And that's enough. We're going to stop there. We only read one response. There are many, many, many other responses. And the reason that we're reading these, we're going to read all the responses eventually. It's good to get educated. And in today's world, in order to be educated on something, it's got to have thousands of repetitions and different versions, different variants, different timings. In order to be a good communicator, that's what you need. Yeah. Yeah. They're already working on that. There are many different shuyukh together.
Oh.
Yeah. So the thing is that this is not like a hip topic, by the way. Maybe amongst fuqaha, this is a big topic of the month, and it's important, right? For the regular viewer, some of them either just wave it away, some of them say nah, some of them say yeah, we want to get Mamdani in, right, or the likes of him. Okay.
They made this fatwa. I feel like they already have to take action. I don't know if that's right, but like, why else would they make the fatwa unless they're responding to something?
Someone who wants to act upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are very gung-ho on politics, and they're in the world, and this would change things for them.
Even within their council, I think there was disagreements. Like they had it at the end of the link.
Yeah.
Fatwa.
I want to read Shaykh Amin Kholwadia's response real quick because I said I would read it, and it's actually pretty short. I'm writing this article to advise the U.S. Muslim community to not give credence to the fatwa, in quotes, he said, issued by Fikna and Amja. Darul Qasim's Darul Ifta will issue a more detailed rebuttal from a fiqh perspective. Acquiescence to, this is like aggressive. I mean, he started right off the bat. He's not even trying to play nice. Acquiescence to a status quo is built upon defeatism and inertia. Over time, it breeds intellectual laziness, discourages creativity, and creates a lack of trust in disciplined scholarship. When the printing press became widespread technology and thousands of books were able to be printed at scale, some so-called intellectual Muslims went ahead and began printing copies of the Quran and distributing them everywhere, glorifying technological progress. This traditional scholars in Istanbul advised people not to do that, not out of alienation against progress, but simply out of Islamic loyalty and preservation and integrity of the Quran. And the printing press back then was not yet ready for prime time. The mullahs were branded in society as backward and unwilling to use technology. They were declared as non-relevant and incapable of using ijtihad. When the printed copies came into the market, almost every reader of the Quran found hundreds of mistakes in the printed copies and then told the mullahs to correct the mistakes of the said intellectuals, ulama. He's saying mullahs because they were looked down on, right, by the people. He's using that, I guess, sarcastically. Ulama had to sit down and correct all the mistakes by hand. It was a horribly painstaking process in which the said intellectuals could play no role as they did not know the words of the Quran. The ulama saved the day for the ummah by not assuming they had prerogatives to employ a false sense of ijtihad where it did not belong. If progressive intellectuals actually listened to the traditional ulama, they would have saved the ummah from a tremendous stress and embarrassment. There are ulama still alive in Egypt today who narrate this story from their own fathers. A similar and more recent example is that of the Muslims who migrated to Britain in the 60s and 70s. They had much hardship. They did not have halal meat readily available. Pragmatic voices could have called for permitting reliance on meat from the people of the book under claims of necessity. I mean, we would say in the Maliki Madhab, that's permitted as long as they slaughter regardless of necessity. However, British Hanafi scholars advise against this approach, telling British Muslims that they could not buy meat from the Ahl Kitab despite the need at the time. So instead of shifting the goalposts of religious obligation through pseudo-legal exceptions, British Muslims invested in infrastructure, entrepreneurship, collective organization. In short period of time, halal meat became widely available and then became mainstream in markets and restaurants. The outcome did not result from lowering standards. It was a result of meeting them through principled creativity and reliance. This is basically his prologue. The fiqhi juristic article will come later. This is basically him saying, don't do it. We'll discuss why in a second. We're cooking the fatwa as we speak.
There's a double meaning to what Shaykh Amin is writing here.
What is it?
So this is a double entendre because
Mhm.
Shaykh Yasir Qadi published a YouTube video.
Yeah.
The rise and fall of the Muslim Ummah and the printing press.
Mm.
And he views that the Muslim world delayed adoption of the printing press in a pivotal moment where global power and intellectual and political power, that's what he says, shifted to Europe instead. So for him to say this, it's like, yes, he's using it as an example for the layman, but it's also a direct...
I think that's an Orientalist take. The printing press is not, that the idea that because we delayed the printing press, we fell behind. That's an Orientalist take. Muslims fell behind because of sinfulness. That's the Islamic, Quranic viewpoint. Allah does not leave the righteous people to collapse the way the Ummah has collapsed and be colonized except through your sins. I don't think the printing press was the main issue.
Amin is literally speaking to him directly and to...
Yeah. Okay, subhanAllah. Yeah, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize the game within the game, as they call it, right? His historical precedents give us further reasons to condemn a recent fatwa, quote unquote, he says. Still no camera yet, issued by the Fiqh Council of North America and the Assembly of Muslim Jurists, allowing the use of zakat for political campaigns. Included therein is their implied critique of the many dissenting scholars who question their assumed juristic reasoning and its broader implications, implying that their lack of ijtihad fails to help Muslims progress in the USA. The opinion expressed, that's always a modernist take. Because you won't go against your madhahib, you're not succeeding. That's not right. The opinion expressed by these two groups represents a minuscule minority, and the overwhelming majority of Muslim scholars in the USA are vehemently against the idea. I'm not going to discuss the flimsy and shoddy scholarship in the fatwa. Oof. He's kicking at the legs. He's knocking out ankles. He's swinging left hooks. I'm surprised because I thought of all Darul Qasim's this is almost like a yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no, because you imagine multi-million-dollar institutions, elderly scholars, they all deal with each other, they meet each other, they have to be polite. I would have assumed, my guess would have been, it would be very muted, it would be very polite, and it wouldn't use adjectives like this. It wouldn't punch right away. That's my assumption. Obviously, my assumption was wrong. Yeah. So he says, what deserves emphasis here is a concern about methodology. See, that's what I said earlier. The deeper question is, who is the right to go outside the bounds of the madhabs and then make ijtihad? Isn't that what we said earlier? Still no cam, Arifu? Haji. Maybe it's not too hot. Okay. Ijtihad requires immense dexterity in juristic nuance and principle. Superficial words of fiqh is not how an alim refers to ijtihad. The idea of allowing something based on darura is something a high school student can use his rudimentary essay. Scholars only turn to darura if there is no other way to fulfill the command, which there is, sadaqah. I advise all Muslims reading the fatwa to not get caught in a web of deceit and to not acquiesce to an opinion which deserves no scholarly merit. Ask the hundreds of dissenting scholars why they object, and do not follow a very isolated view on this matter. Muslims are already, look at the adjectives he's using here, right? High school, rudimentary. What else did he say here? He said superficial. Oof. Okay. That's what in quotes. Web of deceit. Whoa. Yeah. Oh my God. Too bad the camera's not working. They're just going to see the Safina logo. Muslims are already under great pressure by living in this country. Muslims don't need further stimuli for trauma. A fatwa is supposed to bring ease and sukoon and not make their lives difficult and complicated. Orientalists and others have already taken the meaning and interpretation of Islamic texts away from the ummah. Now super rich politicians of the West, who by no means qualify to receive zakah, want to hijack our ibadah as well. What a tragedy and what an abomination in the name of ijtihad. What? I was so wrong about what I thought Dar al-Qasim would publish on this, but he's laid the line super crystal clear on it, and he's used very emotionally triggering, jarring, and inspiring, and maybe you could say too, language. Okay? And he's got his fuqaha working overtime with the hazmat suit on and go down into the fatwa lab and work deep at 11 p.m. cooking up the fatwa. Okay? In the lab. That's going to come out, and you know it's going to be extremely fiqhi, juristically, I would say, wrecking ball to the epistemology. Because the thing is this, I don't even think that you have to talk about the subject matter. You have to talk about the methodology. If you talk about someone who says, yes, I can go outside the method and give ijtihad, then to talk about his fatwa is irrelevant. His method is more important. The methodological approach, if you don't disagree, if you don't agree on that, then what is the value of engaging him on the fatwa itself? He believes he can go outside and the madhahib and give a new ruling. Right? Yeah.
Ammar actually asked a question to the Ihya department.
Yeah.
So they're pretty busy right now. I wasn't sure why, but now I know.
We apologize. Please resubmit your question after Ramadan, as we are currently focused on the ibadat related issue. Include Salah, Som, Zakah, Umrah, Hajj. Subhanallah. So I'm telling you, they are. Shaykh Amin is the boss there, and he's the chief. And when he tells his students and who are shuyukh, by the way, you go on and write this article. Yeah.
Literally not.
Subhanallah.
I've never in New York City.
Shaykh Amin is not just the CEO of the organization, he's the sheikh of the people, personal sheikh, murabbi, like sheikh and murid. Yeah. Yeah. The advocates of such a pitiful another grenade of an adjective. Pitiful fatwa should be courageous enough to exhort Muslims to fight their own battles in Gaza and other parts of the world. They should not simply give up and cry about their fate in front of those who may have caused it. Meaning go begging politicians to change our fate. You're the cause of it, you politicians. We need independence of and in our religion. We need our own strategic planning, strategies, planning, and organization. Allah will helps those who help themselves. Playing games. Not playing games. You know, I wish I could highlight all the jarring adjectives used in this. SubhanAllah. All right, we got to stop here. The camera stopped working, telling us we got to go. Meeting at 4:45 in the masjid. We're all going to go by, get shawarmas right now. Then we'll go to the masjid. Any one of you fasting? Yeah.
Would you be okay with us shouting out two programs that were...
Shout them out. Go ahead. Unfortunately, you don't have the camera, but shout
Okay.
as you wish.
All right, so my name is Dewan Hassan. I'm here with my friend Hassan, who's on the Shura of Ihya, and we have two programs happening this weekend to get everyone ready for Ramadan. One is a Tajweed intensive, and this is a 5-hour course. And afterwards, we'll assign you a teacher if you want to continue reading during Ramadan and throughout the year. And this is specifically focused on people who are like 20 and older, because they're the neglected group when it comes to Tajweed. They don't have the resources for it. And we also realize, like, when people don't pay for ilm, they don't take it seriously, especially if it's like a difficult course, right? So it's going to cost like $20
$20, it's free.
If a group of 4 come, and 25 if you come alone. And all
Wait,
the
20
funds,
if it's a group of 4?
No, 20 each.
Oh,
if it's a
20
group of
each.
4,
Okay.
And 25 if you're coming alone. And
That's
all the
free.
funds will go to Mufti Aminul's and his wife's madrasa. It's a girls' madrasa. Where,
Girls madrasa, mashallah.
yeah, which does very well. They have like 160 students,
That's
mashallah.
good.
It's called Al-Kauthar Institute. And
Mashallah. Where is that?
it's in Jackson Heights.
New York. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
in New York. And
Who
then
runs that school?
Mufti Aminul.
Oh, okay. The
and-
one that we always...
Yeah, always.
He's
yeah.
great, mashallah.
And then on Sunday, we have Sheikh Ismail Bowers coming to talk about dua and
Wonderful.
why it's the essence of worship.
Amazing.
And Sheikh Shamsun, right before, she will speak to sisters only on engaging with the words of Allah.
Excellent.
So the first program is dealing with like tools, the
Yeah.
alamat for engaging with Ramadan, and the second part is getting your heart ready for Ramadan.
Amazing.
Inshallah,
This is all in Queens.
it's all in Queens.
All in
It's all
Astoria, Queens.
yeah.
Right
Yeah.
off of the street that is... What's it
Probably
called?
no Steinway.
Steinway.
Yeah, it's not far off from Steinway.
Not far from Steinway. Because I remember every time we drive through, we usually swing by and scoop up a snack from Steinway and go on.
Ziyara.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Gentlemen, جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And pay attention, we got a new closing today. New credits. Is it up, Alif? All right, go.